Officer James Riley had worked in the Pinewood Police Department for 15 years. He was a big man with cold eyes that made people look away when he stared at them. Many in the community feared him. Kids would cross the street when they saw his police car coming. The older folks would warn newcomers, "Be careful around Officer Riley." He was known for being harsh, especially with people of color. When he pulled someone over, white drivers got warnings, black drivers got tickets. Hispanic teens got harsh questions about gangs even when they were just walking home from school. His fellow officers noticed it but said nothing. In the break room, they would shrug and say, "That's just Riley being Riley." No one wanted to cause trouble. The police chief once told him to tone it down a bit, but nothing changed. James had been this way for so long that no one believed he could be different. Deep down, James carried anger from his childhood. His father had been strict and sometimes cruel. When James made small mistakes as a boy, his father would make him stand in a corner for hours. Sometimes there were belt whippings that left marks. His mother would cry but never stopped it. James never dealt with those feelings, and they shaped how he treated others. He became the thing he feared most, a bully with power. One hot summer evening, James was patrolling alone near the community center. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Most stores were closing. Streetlights were just coming on. James rolled down his window to feel the warm breeze. That's when he saw her. A woman named Amara Johnson was leaving a meeting at the center. She was a respected elementary school teacher who had lived in Pinewood her whole life. Her students loved her. Parents fought to get their kids into her class. She had a bright, colorful scarf wrapped around her hair and wore a flowing summer dress with flower patterns. Amara was talking loudly on her phone as she walked to her car, laughing about something her sister had said. James watched her from his car. Something about her bothered him. Her confidence, her loud laugh, the way she moved like she belonged. He parked his car and got out. "Ma'am," he called sharply. Amara didn't hear him at first, still talking on her phone. "Ma'am!" he shouted louder. This time she turned. "I need to see some ID," James said, hand resting on his belt near his gun. Amara's smile faded. "Officer, I'm just heading home. Is something wrong?" "ID now," James demanded. His voice had that edge that scared people into obeying. Amara sighed. This had happened before. "I'm on the phone with my sister. Can I tell her I'll call back?" "Hang up and show me some ID," James said, stepping closer. Amara spoke quickly into her phone. "Tasha, I'll call you back. There's a police officer here." She put her phone in her purse and reached for her wallet. "What's the problem, officer?" "I was just at a school board meeting. I teach 3rd grade at Pine Elementary." James didn't answer her question. "What were you doing behind the community center? There's been drug activity reported there." Amara looked confused. "I wasn't behind the center. The meeting was inside. I'm just walking to my car." She pointed to a blue sedan parked under a streetlight. "Don't get smart with me," James warned. He was getting annoyed at what he saw as attitude. "Empty your purse on the hood of my car." "What?" "No, I haven't done anything wrong." Amara's voice rose. A few people walking nearby slowed down to watch. "Are you refusing to comply?" James stepped even closer. Amara stood her ground. "I know my rights. You need reasonable suspicion to search my things. I was at a public meeting that just ended. Ask anyone inside." "Hands where I can see them," James shouted, as if Amara had threatened him. Amara raised her hands in frustration. "This is ridiculous. I'm a teacher, not a criminal." James felt threatened when Amara raised her hands and spoke loudly. Something in him snapped. In a terrible moment that would change both their lives, he struck her with his fist. The blow caught Amara on the side of her face. She fell hard to the ground, her purse spilling open, her colorful scarf coming loose. There was a moment of shocked silence. Then people started shouting. Phones came out. Everything was being recorded. A teenager yelled, "He hit her! Did you see that? He just hit her for nothing." Amara sat on the ground holding her face, too stunned to speak or cry. Blood trickled from her lip. James stood over her, suddenly realizing what he had done. For a brief second, he saw his father's face reflected in a nearby window. Or was it his own? Someone helped Amara to her feet. Another person shouted, "What's your badge number? We're reporting this." James backed away, got in his car, and radioed in an incident without giving details. He drove off as more people gathered around Amara, offering tissues for her bleeding lip, calling 911, sharing the videos they had just taken. By midnight, the videos were everywhere. People shared them on social media with angry comments. News stations played the clips on late-night broadcasts. Police brutality caught on camera. Read the headlines. One clear video showed everything. Amara calmly talking, raising her hands in a gesture of frustration, and James punching her without real provocation. There was no way to spin this story. The evidence was too clear. The next morning, James woke up with a pounding headache. Empty beer cans lay around his small apartment. The TV was still on, showing news about the incident. His phone had died after ringing non-stop the day before. He plugged it in and watched, with dread, as messages flooded the screen. Most were from fellow officers. Some were supportive. "Hang in there, buddy." Others were not. "You really messed up this time." The police chief had left 3 voicemails. James listened to the first. 1. "Riley, get to my office by noon. This is serious." James didn't bother with the other messages. He knew what was coming. He showered and put on his uniform out of habit. Then he took it off again. Better to go in regular clothes. He chose a plain blue shirt and khaki pants. As he drove to the station, he noticed people looking at his car. They recognized him from the news. A woman pulled her child closer as he passed. At the station, everything felt different. The desk sergeant, who usually greeted him with a smile, just nodded stiffly. Officers who had been his friends for years suddenly had paperwork to do when he walked by. No one would look him in the eye. The chief was waiting in his office with a woman James didn't recognize. "This is Linda Moore from Internal Affairs," the chief said. His voice was cold. "No, hello, no, have a seat." "Officer Riley," Linda said. "We've reviewed the videos. Multiple angles, multiple witnesses. There's no gray area here." James nodded. He couldn't argue. He had seen the videos, too. "You're suspended without pay pending a full investigation," the chief said. "Badge and gun, please." James handed them over. The weight of his belt felt strange without his gun. The chief didn't offer his hand to shake. The meeting was over in less than 5 minutes. As James left, he heard the chief say to Linda, "We need to get ahead of this. The media is all over it." Outside the station, a small group of protesters had gathered. Someone recognized James and pointed. "That's him," they shouted. James hurried to his car as people took pictures with their phones. One sign read, "Justice for Amara Johnson." Another said, "Black Lives Matter." James felt sick. He had always seen those signs on TV about other cops in other cities. Now they were for him. He drove home and turned off his phone again. He pulled the blinds and locked the door. On TV, a reporter stood outside Pinewood Elementary School. "Amara Johnson has been a teacher here for 8 years, the reporter said. "Parents and colleagues describe her as dedicated and loving. She remains in hospital with a concussion and facial injuries." The camera showed pictures of Amara with her students, her bright smile, the colorful classroom decorations. Then they showed the video of James hitting her again. It looked even worse, now more violent, more senseless. 3 days passed. James barely ate. He didn't answer the door when people knocked. His neighbor slipped a note under his door. "The reporters are asking questions about you." I didn't tell them anything. On the 4th day, James finally turned on his phone again. There were dozens of missed calls, including one from a number he didn't recognize. The voicemail was from a woman named Sarah Kim, who identified herself as Amara Johnson's lawyer. "Officer Riley, Ms. Johnson has been released from the hospital. She's aware that the district attorney is considering criminal charges against you. If you wish to discuss this matter, please call me back." James stared at the phone for a long time. Then he called the number. Sarah Kim answered on the second ring. "I need to talk to her," James said. To Ms. Johnson, I need to apologize. There was a long pause. My client has been through a traumatic experience. Why should she agree to meet with you? I don't have a good answer, James admitted. I need to tell her I'm sorry, in person. She can bring anyone she wants, you'll be there. I'll come alone. Another pause. Let me discuss it with Ms. Johnson. I'll call you back. James paced around his apartment. He didn't expect Amara to agree. Why would she? He had hurt her for no reason. He had abused his power. He had let his prejudice control his actions. There was no excuse. But an hour later, Sarah Kim called back. Ms. Johnson has agreed to meet you tomorrow at the Community Dispute Resolution Center. Do you know where that is? Yes, James said, surprised. Yes, I know it. 3 o'clock. Don't be late. And Officer Riley? Ms. Johnson is doing this on her terms. If at any point she wants the meeting to end, it ends, understood? Understood, James said. And, thank her for me, for agreeing to this. The next day, James arrived at the center 30 minutes early. It was a small building downtown that handled neighborhood disputes and minor civil matters, a place for people to talk things out instead of going to court. James had never been inside before. A middle-aged man greeted him. I'm Marcus Bell, the mediator. We'll be in room 3. He led James to a small room with a round table and 5 chairs. Ms. Johnson will be here soon with her lawyer and her brother. Are you ready for this conversation? James nodded, though he wasn't sure. What could he possibly say to make things right? At exactly 3 o'clock, the door opened. Sarah Kim entered. First, then a tall man who must be Amara's brother. He glared at James with undisguised hatred. Then Amara walked in. James gasped. Her face was badly bruised. Purple and yellow marks covered her left cheek. Her lip was swollen with a small cut. She walked slowly, like someone much older than her 35 years. The sight of her injuries he had caused, hit James like a physical blow. His legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees in front of her. He hadn't planned this. It just happened. I'm sorry, he whispered. Tears filled his eyes. I'm so sorry. Amara's brother stepped forward as if to protect her, but she raised her hand to stop him. She looked down at James, studying his face. Get up, she said finally. Her voice was steady, stronger than James expected. I didn't come here to see you on your knees. I came to hear what you have to say. James stood up shakily and returned to his chair. Marcus, the mediator, spoke gently. Let's begin. Officer Riley, would you like to start? James took a deep breath. I hurt you, Ms. Johnson. There's no excuse for what I did. I abused my power. I let my prejudice affect how I treated you. I've been doing that for years, treating people differently because of their race. No one ever called me out on it. Other officers saw it and said nothing. But that doesn't excuse me. He paused, looking directly at Amara. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, I'm going to plead guilty to whatever charges they bring. I won't make you go through a trial, and I'm resigning from the force. I can't be a police officer anymore. Not after this. Amara nodded slowly. Why did you do it? Why did you approach me that night? What made you so angry? James struggled to answer honestly. I saw you and something just triggered me. Your confidence, the way you were talking loudly on your phone. I made assumptions. I thought you were being disrespectful, but the truth is, if you had been white, I probably wouldn't have even noticed you. Amara's brother made a disgusted sound. So you admit it was racial profiling? Yes, James said simply. It was. I can see that now. Amara leaned forward. Do you know what it's like, Officer Riley? To be afraid every time you see a police car? To teach your children how to behave around cops so they don't get hurt? To be treated like a criminal in your own neighborhood? James shook his head. No, I don't know what that's like. That's the problem, Amara said. You have power, but no understanding. The meeting room fell silent after Amara's words. James looked down at his hands, unable to meet her eyes. The mediator, Marcus, waited patiently for someone to speak again. Amara's brother Dion stood with his arms crossed, watching James like a hawk. Sarah Kim, Amara's lawyer, took notes quietly. "I want to understand," James said finally. "I've never tried before, but I want to now." Amara studied his face, looking for signs of dishonesty. She had heard empty promises from authority figures before, but something in James's broken expression seemed genuine. "Tell me about yourself," she said. "Not the police officer, the person." James wasn't prepared for this question. He had expected anger, accusations, not curiosity. "I grew up poor," he began slowly. "My dad worked at the steel mill until it closed. Then he drank a lot, got mean. My mom tried to protect me and my sister, but she couldn't always." He paused. "That's not an excuse for what I did. Nothing excuses that." "Keep going," Amara said. "I joined the police because I wanted to have power, to be the one people respected, maybe feared a little." James looked ashamed. "I never said that out loud before, but it's true." Dion shook his head in disgust. "So you became just like your old man? A bully?" James nodded. "Yes, that's exactly what happened." Marcus, the mediator, spoke up. "Amara, would you like to share your experience? Not just from that night, but your broader experience with law enforcement." Amara took a deep breath. "My first memory of police was when I was 6 years old. Officers came to our house looking for my cousin. They pushed my mother against a wall. When she asked to see a warrant, I was hiding under the kitchen table, terrified." She looked directly at James. "My cousin wasn't even there. They had the wrong house." James winced. Amara continued. "In high school, police officers came to our school with drug-sniffing dogs. They only searched the lockers of Black and Hispanic students. In college, campus police stopped me constantly, asking for my ID, asking what I was doing there. As if I couldn't possibly be a student." She touched her bruised face gently. "What you did to me wasn't new, Officer Riley. It was just caught on camera this time." The room fell silent again. James felt a deep shame burning inside him. Not just for hitting Amara, but for all the times he had been part of the problem she described. "What happens now?" he asked. "I meant what I said. I'll plead guilty. I'll resign. But that feels not enough." Sarah Kim spoke up. "The district attorney is charging you with assault and civil rights violations. You're looking at possible jail time, definitely loss of your pension." James nodded. "I understand." Amara leaned forward. "I've been thinking about this a lot. Jail won't fix what's broken here. It won't change the system that made you think it was okay to treat me that way." "What do you mean?" James asked. "I want restorative justice," Amara said firmly. "Instead of just punishment, I want healing. For me, for the community. And yes, even for you." Dion looked surprised. "Sis, are you sure? This man hurt you. He deserves to pay for that." "And he will," Amara said, "but in a way that might actually make things better." She turned to Sarah. "Can we ask for community, service instead of jail time? Speaking engagements about police bias? Training programs?" Sarah nodded slowly. "We can ask. The judge might agree, especially if it's what you want as the victim." "I'm not a victim," Amara said firmly. "I'm a survivor, and I want something good to come from this pain." James looked at her with amazement. "Why would you do that for me?" "Not for you," Amara corrected him. "For every Black person who gets pulled over unfairly. For every brown child who grows up afraid of the police. This isn't about you or me anymore, it's about change." 2 weeks later, James stood in a courtroom. He wore a simple suit his sister had helped him buy. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the back rows. Amara sat with her family on one side. Some of James's former fellow officers sat on the other, though many had distanced themselves from him. The judge, an older Black woman named Judge Harris, looked at James sternly. "Officer Riley, you have pleaded guilty to assault and deprivation of civil rights under color of law. These are serious charges. Before I sentence you, do you have anything to say to this court? James stood up. His legs felt weak, but his voice was steady. Your Honor, I am guilty. I abused my power. I let prejudice guide my actions. I hurt Ms. Johnson physically and emotionally. There's no excuse for what I did. He turned slightly to look at Amara. I'm grateful that Ms. Johnson has asked for restorative justice instead of the maximum jail sentence. I don't deserve her mercy, but I promise to honor it by working every day to change myself and to help change the system that let me behave that way for so long. Judge Harris nodded. Ms. Johnson has submitted a victim impact statement and a request for alternative sentencing. Ms. Johnson, would you like to address the court? Amara stood. Her face was healing, but faint bruises were still visible. Your Honor, what happened to me happens to people who look like me every day, but it doesn't make the news because there's no video. No one is watching. I want Officer Riley to face consequences, but I also want something positive to come from this pain. She looked at James. I believe he is truly sorry, and I believe he can help change things if given the chance to do so instead of sitting in a jail cell. Judge Harris considered this. I've reviewed your proposal, Ms. Johnson. It's unusual but thoughtful. She turned to James. Officer Riley, here is my sentence. You will resign from the police force immediately. You will serve 1,000 hours of community service, focusing on anti-bias training for law enforcement. You will participate in a restorative justice program designed by Ms. Johnson and community leaders. The judge continued. You will be on probation for 5 years. Any violation will result in immediate jail time. You will pay Ms. Johnson's medical expenses and additional compensation as determined by the civil case. Do you understand these terms? Yes, Your Honor, James said. Thank you. Don't thank me, Judge Harris said firmly. Thank Ms. Johnson for believing that people can change. This court is adjourned. As people filed out of the courtroom, James approached Amara cautiously. Her brother Dion stepped between them, protective as always. It's okay, Amara told him. Give us a minute. Dion moved away reluctantly, still watching closely. Thank you, James said quietly. I don't know what to say except that. Don't thank me yet, Amara replied. The hard work starts now. I'll be watching to make sure you keep your promises. James nodded. I know. I won't let you down. This isn't about me, Amara reminded him. It's about making real change. As they stood there, a reporter approached them, camera crew in tow. Ms. Johnson, Officer Riley, can we get a statement about the sentencing? Amara looked at James. Ready to start the work? He nodded. Yes, I'm ready. They turned to face the cameras together, an unlikely pair united by pain but now working toward healing. Not just for themselves, but for their divided community. 3 months passed. James stood nervously outside Pinewood High School. He wore a plain button-up shirt and khaki pants. No uniform, no badge, no gun. Just a visitor badge clipped to his pocket. Students walked past him, some giving him curious looks. A few recognized him from the news. Today was the first day of the program that Amara had designed as part of his restorative justice sentence. They would speak to high school students about prejudice, power, and accountability. James had spent weeks preparing, but his mouth felt dry as he waited. Amara arrived carrying a stack of handouts. She looked different now. The bruises were gone. She stood taller, more confident. The incident had changed her too, but not in the way James had feared. Instead of breaking her, it had made her stronger. Nervous? She asked, seeing his face. Terrified, James admitted. What if they hate me? Some of them probably will, Amara said honestly. But that's part of the process. You have to face the anger to get to healing. They walked together to the school auditorium. It was filled with juniors and seniors, about 200 teenagers sitting in rows. Teachers stood along the walls. The principal, Dr. Martinez, introduced them. We have 2 special guests today to talk about an important issue, she said. Ms. Amara Johnson, who many of you know as a teacher from Pine Elementary, and Mr. James Riley, a former police officer. A murmur went through the crowd. Many students recognized their names, connected them to the viral video from months ago. Amara spoke first. She was a natural teacher, engaging the students with questions about their experiences with authority figures. She shared some of her own stories, not just the incident with James, but other times she had been treated unfairly because of her race. Prejudice isn't always violent, she explained. Sometimes it's quiet, a store clerk following you around, a teacher calling on the white students more often, a police officer pulling over black drivers more than white ones. Then it was James's turn. His hands shook as he took the microphone. He looked out at the sea of young faces, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, all watching him with various expressions of curiosity, anger, or skepticism. "My name is James Riley," he began. "6 months ago I was a police officer in this town. I abused my power. I let prejudice control my actions. I hurt Ms. Johnson physically and emotionally, and I'm here to take responsibility for that." He paused, gathering courage. "For 15 years I treated people differently based on their race. I pulled over more black drivers. I was rougher with Hispanic teenagers. I was more likely to believe white people's stories. And no one, not my fellow officers, not my supervisors, ever stopped me." A boy in the front row raised his hand. "Why are you telling us this? Are we supposed to feel sorry for you?" "No," James said firmly. "You're not supposed to feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because systems don't change unless people inside them speak up. I was part of a broken system and I was broken too. But now I'm trying to fix both." The students asked hard questions. Some were angry. One girl shared a story about her brother being harassed by police. A boy talked about being followed in stores. James listened, really listened, without getting defensive. This was part of his punishment, but also part of his learning. Amara watched him with growing respect. He wasn't the same man who had struck her months ago. That man had been full of anger and fear. This James was humbled, open, trying to be better. After the school presentation, they walked to the parking lot together. "You did well," Amara said. "Better than I expected." "Thanks," James replied. It felt important. Like maybe some of those kids might trust police a little less, blindly. Or the ones who want to become officers might do it differently. "That's the hope," Amara agreed. "We have the middle school next week, then the community center." James nodded. "I'll be ready." Over the next few months, they spoke at schools, churches, and community centers. They developed a rhythm. Amara would speak first, then James. They would take questions together. Sometimes the audiences were hostile, especially toward James. But they kept going. James started volunteering at a youth center in a predominantly black neighborhood. At first, the kids were wary of him. They knew who he was, what he had done. But slowly, he earned their trust by showing up consistently, by listening to them, by playing basketball badly and making them laugh. Amara returned to teaching at Pine Elementary. Her students had missed her. Parents were supportive, bringing her flowers and cards. But some people in the community criticized her for working with James. They called her a sellout, said she was too forgiving. "Why are you helping him?" her brother Dion asked one night over dinner. "He should be in jail, not getting a second chance." "I'm not doing it for him," Amara explained. "I'm doing it for those kids at the youth center, for my students, for the community. What good would it do to have him sitting in a cell? This way, he's actually helping create change." Dion shook his head. "I still don't trust him." "You don't have to," Amara said. "I'm watching him closely. The first sign that he's not genuine, I'll walk away." But James continued to surprise her. He didn't just show up for the required programs. He went beyond what the court ordered. He started a support group for police officers who wanted to address bias in their work. He met with the police chief to discuss policy changes. 6 months into their work together, Amara and James were invited to speak at a national conference on police reform. They sat in the hotel lobby the night before reviewing their presentation. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" James asked. Working together like this? Amara shook her head. Never. That night when you approached me, I was so scared, and then so angry. You had every right to be, James said. James, I think about it every day. What I did. How it changed both our lives. Not all change is bad, Amara said thoughtfully. I've become stronger, more outspoken. I'm not just teaching ABCs anymore. I'm teaching kids to stand up for themselves, to recognize unfairness. James nodded. You've changed me too, more than you know. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Not friends exactly, but partners in something important. I have something to tell you, James said finally. I got a job offer from the police academy in the next state. They want me to help develop anti-bias training for new recruits. Amara's eyes widened. Are you going to take it? I wanted to ask what you think first, James said. Would I be running away from what happened here? Or is it a chance to prevent other officers from making the same mistakes I did? Amara considered this carefully. I think you should take it. On one condition. What's that? That you keep telling your story honestly. Don't make yourself the hero. Tell them about your prejudice, your mistake, your consequences. Tell them about dropping to your knees when you realized what you'd done. James nodded solemnly. I promise. No sugarcoating. The full ugly truth. Then I think you should do it, Amara said. Change has to happen at the beginning, with how officers are trained. As they returned to their presentation notes, a reporter who recognized them approached their table. Ms. Johnson, Mr. Riley, can I ask you a few questions? People are calling. Your partnership a model for restorative justice. What do you say to that? James looked at Amara. This was always her call, whether to engage with media. Amara nodded. We'll answer your questions. But first, understand this isn't a feel-good story about forgiveness. It's a hard story about accountability and change. Are you ready to tell that story honestly? 1 year had passed since that fateful night when James had punched Amara. A full cycle of seasons had changed the world around them, and time had changed them too. James stood at the podium in a large conference room at the police academy. 50 new police recruits sat before him, men and women of different races and backgrounds. They wore crisp uniforms and serious expressions. These young people would soon have badges, guns, and power. James's job was to make sure they used that power better than he had. My name is James Riley, he began, as he always did. 1 year ago, I was a police officer with 15 years of experience. I abused my power. I let my prejudice control my actions. I assaulted an innocent woman because of the color of her skin. He paused, letting that sink in. Some recruits shifted uncomfortably, in their seats. I'm here to tell you my story. Not to make myself feel better, not to be forgiven, but because I don't want any of you to make the same mistakes I did. James clicked a button and the video appeared on the screen behind him. It still hurt to watch, his angry face. Amara's shock as she fell, the gasps from bystanders. He never looked away during the video, no matter how many times he showed it. That was part of his penance. When the video ended, a young black woman in the front row raised her hand. Sir, why did you do it? What were you thinking at that moment? It was the question he always dreaded but always answered honestly. I wasn't thinking. I was reacting based on years of unchecked bias. I saw a black woman speaking loudly and I automatically viewed her as a threat. Not because she was threatening, but because I had spent years seeing black people as more dangerous, more suspicious. A white male recruit raised his hand next. But you're working here now, you got a second chance. Doesn't that show the system works? James shook his head. I got a second chance because the woman I hurt believed in restorative justice. The system would have put me in jail and forgotten about me. Nothing would have changed. I'm standing here because Amara Johnson is extraordinary, not because the system works. As if on cue, the door at the back of the room opened. Amara walked in, smiling at the surprised faces that turned to look at her. This wasn't planned. She was supposed to arrive tomorrow for their joint presentation. Sorry I'm late, she said, walking to the front. My flight got in early. James smiled, genuinely happy to see her. Everyone, this is Amara Johnson, the woman from the video, the reason I'm standing here today. Amara shook her head slightly at his introduction. I'm more than that video, she told the recruits. I'm a teacher, a sister, a friend, a community member, and now I'm an advocate for police reform. Together, they spent the next hour answering questions. The recruits were curious, sometimes defensive, sometimes amazed at how these two people could work together after what had happened. When the session ended, James and Amara walked across the campus together. It was fall, and colorful leaves crunched under their feet. You're getting better at this, Amara observed. More honest, less self-pitying. James chuckled. Thanks, I think. How are things back in Pinewood? Changing slowly, Amara said. The new police chief is implementing some of the policies we suggested. Community oversight, body cameras that can't be turned off, regular anti-bias training. And your students? James asked. He knew how much her elementary school class meant to her. Amara smiled broadly. They're amazing. We're working on a community helpers project. They're learning that questioning authority is actually a form of respect. It holds people accountable. They reached a small campus cafe and sat at an outdoor table. This had become their ritual when they met for presentations, coffee and honest conversation. I have news, Amara said after they ordered. I've been offered a position on the ER, Mayor's Task Force for Police Reform. It would mean taking a year off from teaching. You should take it, James said immediately. You'd be amazing. I'm considering it, Amara replied. What about you? Your probation ends in a few months. What then? James had thought about this a lot. I've been offered a permanent position here at the academy, developing the full anti-bias curriculum, not just giving talks. Will you take it? I think so, James said. It feels like the right place for me now, using my mistakes to prevent others from making them. Their coffee arrived, and they sipped in comfortable silence for a moment. Their relationship had evolved over the year. Not friendship exactly, the weight of their history prevented that, but something like mutual respect built on shared purpose. Have you seen the numbers? Amara asked. From Pinewood? James nodded. Complaints against officers down 40%. Arrests of Black and Hispanic residents down 30%. Crime rates unchanged. He smiled slightly. Turns out you don't need to harass people to keep a community safe. Your testimony at the state legislature made a difference, Amara said. When a former cop admits to racial profiling and unnecessary force, people listen. Your testimony was more powerful, James countered. You put a human face on the statistics. A student walked past their table, then doubled back, recognizing them. Excuse me, she said nervously. You're the ones from that video, right? The cop and the teacher? James and Amara exchanged glances. They were used to this now. Yes, Amara said simply. I just wanted to say thank you, the young woman continued. I'm studying criminal justice, your story. It changed how I think about policing. After the student left, James shook his head in wonder. I never expected this, that people would see what I did, the worst thing I ever did, and find something positive in it. That's the point of restorative justice, Amara reminded him, taking harm and creating healing from it. Later that evening, they attended a community forum in the town near the academy. The room was packed with local residents, police officers, activists, and officials. James and Amara sat on a panel with other experts to discuss police reform. A local reporter kicked things off with a pointed question. Ms. Johnson, how can you sit next to the man who assaulted you and work with him? Many would say you're letting him off too easily. Amara had heard this question many times. Her answer had evolved over the months. I'm not letting anyone off easily, she said firmly. James has lost his career, his reputation, and nearly his freedom. He continues to face consequences. But I chose to channel my pain toward creating change rather than just punishment. She looked at James briefly. Working with him is not about forgiveness. It's about effectiveness. His voice reaches people mine cannot. Together we've changed more minds than either of us could alone. James nodded in agreement. Amara could have demanded I go to prison. Instead, she demanded I become part of the solution. That's been a harder sentence in many ways, but a more meaningful one. As the forum continued, they addressed tough questions about accountability, racism, power, and change. The conversation was sometimes heated, sometimes hopeful, just like their journey had been. Later, walking back to their hotel, Amara stopped suddenly. Do you ever think about that moment? When you dropped to your knees when you saw what you'd done to me? James nodded slowly. Every day. That's when I knew, Amara said, that you could change. Not because you fell, but because for the first time, you really saw me as a human being. James thought about this. I think you're right. It took hurting you to finally see you. I wish it hadn't happened that way. So do I, Amara said. But here we are. And look at all the people we've reached because of it. They continued walking, an unlikely pair brought together by violence but now united in purpose. Their painful story had become a powerful tool for change. The town of Pinewood was different because of them. The police recruits who heard them would carry their message forward. The wound that had brought them together was healing, leaving a scar that would always remind them of how far they had come.